Hello again, this is Biru from CRCF McGill. This is the first of the 6 training videos on how to set up a LimeSurvey at McGill University for CRCF members. Even though this series of training videos are designed for CRCF members at McGill, many of the contents in these videos contain general information about how to set up a LimeSurvey if you have access to one. Only some of the information is specific to CRCF member at McGill. LimeSurvey is an online survey tool to create surveys intended for use by McGill faculty and staff for research or administrative purposes. LimeSurvey McGill is hosted on the McGill server and maintained by IT Services Service Center Tools Implementation Group. McGill is currently using LimeSurvey version 2. After a bit of communication with McGill IT, they've informed me that the survey data are stored somewhere at McGill University. In terms of security measure for protecting data physically and digitally, McGill IT stated that this LimeSurvey service is hosted according to industrial standard best practices for network infrastructure and security, data security, and security patch management. Physical and system access to servers are restricted. All employees with access have signed a confidentiality clause. So that means many of the research that we do here in CRCF can be conducted using LimeSurvey provided by McGill, unless your research program or your research project is under a specific and more restricted confidentiality agreement. And the good thing about LimeSurvey is that it's free for McGill faculty and staff members. All you need to do is to contact the IT service desk to request access. Once you have been granted access, you will receive an email from IT services with instructions on how to log into the LimeSurvey. And of course, like many other services at McGill, you will need a McGill email address to request access. And you can request access to have multiple surveys at a time. For example, if you want to create surveys in multiple languages, which will be conducted in different countries, in this case, you probably would like to request access to multiple surveys so that the Spanish version survey is set up for Spain and a separate survey, a Chinese language survey, is set up for China, so on and so forth. If you are a CRCF member, when you are requesting access to LimeSurvey, you may also request additional templates with CRCF logos in them. There are currently 3 templates available that contain CRCF logos from McGill IT. The names for these templates are CRCF McGill, CRCF Flat Modern, and CRCF_Orange. As I mentioned earlier, there will be 6 segments on how to set up LimeSurvey at McGill, and the first segment will be on how to set up general survey properties. So now let's start by logging into LimeSurvey, and I'm just gonna click here, and this survey link will be sent to you by email from McGill IT once you have been granted access. So you just need to use the username and the password to log into LimeSurvey. Once you are inside, you see this page like this right here. And if you like to change your password, you can just go to the top right hand side on your email address, just click on it and click your account, and it will bring you to this page where your profile is. You can change your password right here. Because I'm not changing my password today, so I'm just gonna go back to my surveys. One thing to keep in mind while working in the interface of LimeSurvey or basically any other survey system is that it's good not to use the go back button here. By using this go back button while you are setting up your survey may cause serious system errors, so please just don't use it. It's a good habit to use the menus to navigate different pages in this LimeSurvey system, especially when you are setting up when you are at the stage of setting up a survey. As you can see here, I have 2 surveys available to me because I requested 2 surveys from McGill IT. So because I would like to show you how to set up a survey from scratch, I'm just going to go to the empty survey here, the first one here, so that I can show you how to set it up from scratch. So I'm just going to click on it, and it will bring you to this main page, the home page of your first survey. And we'll choose group by group as the format, group by group. And the reason for that is by choosing group by group, all questions in the same group will appear on the same page, which is more handy this way. Okay, so let's start by setting up general survey properties. So just click here. We'll select the first option, general settings and text, the first option right here. Just gonna click it and will bring us to this page here. And we'll start by working on the left hand side first. So of course every survey needs a title. You can change your title here, but I'm just gonna keep my current title, Intro to LimeSurvey for CRCF here. And then you can write a short description about your survey right here. So you can write something like, this survey is about blah 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 blah. And then after, you can also enter a welcome message to welcome your participants to this survey. So you can say, welcome to LimeSurvey, and this survey will not take you more than 15 minutes to complete. Things like that you can all include in the welcome message. Okay, and let's scroll down, move on, and after participants finish their survey, and they will receive an end message. This end message will appear at the end of the survey. So you can, in this section, you can thank participants. Thank you very much for your participation. If you have any questions or concerns about this survey, please contact our researcher using the information below. So that's where you can enter all these kind of messages at the end. Okay, let's move on. So the next one would be date format, and I usually like to use year, month, day, so I'm going to change it to that. But before you change your date format, you need to keep in mind that in terms of data exportation at the end. So usually we will collect survey data and then use this data and put this data in SPSS or Stata or SAS or R, these softwares to analyze our data after. So you need to find a date format that is compatible with your specific software. So usually all the options here are compatible with SPSS, so you can just choose most of them, but I don't think this last one is compatible. So make sure that you double check what kind of date format is acceptable in SPSS or R or SAS or these programs before you change it. Okay, so the last thing you can change is decimal mark. You can change it from dot to comma if you want, but I'm more used to dot, so I'm just keep it as default. And voila, so this is the most general settings that you can do for text elements and settings. So of course we like you to save as frequently as possible, especially when your internet connection is not very stable, in order to avoid any loss of data or any loss of changes. It's better to save frequently. Okay, so now we're done filling information on the left hand side, so let's continue on the right hand side on this page. So let's start with general options. So general options, first one is base language, English. This is default, you cannot change it. And because I requested this survey, so that's why my information is automatically filled in as an administrator, and my email address was filled in here as an admin email and bounce email as well. And nothing we need to change here. And in terms of format, we mentioned before we would like to have group by group because we want all the questions in the same group appearing on the same page. So the next thing we can change is the template. As I mentioned before, for CRCF members, we have 3 additional templates with CRCF logos in it. So if you want, you can request them and use them. So the first one is CRCF Flat Modern, and then CRCF McGill, CRCF Orange. For illustrated purposes, I'm just going to choose CRCF McGill today. Okay, so that's that for the first section, general options. Let's save. And let's minimize this and move on to the next section, which is presentation and navigation. Okay, so the first option is show welcome screen. We're going to keep it on because we want people to see it, to show the welcome screen. And The third option is allow backward navigation. We're going to keep it as off because most of the time we don't want participants to go back to change their answers after they complete other questions. So we would like them to answer the question according to the order of the survey. So that's why we usually keep this as off. So allow backward navigation off. And show question index, allow jumping. Please keep this as disabled. Otherwise, participants can skip many questions. So this will not allow them to jump from one section to another. So it's better to keep it as disabled. Okay, so let's move on. We'll keep this as off and progress bar on, so the participant can see on the top page on their page. They will see a progress bar and how far they are in completing the survey, which is good. Okay, so the next one I would like you to change is this one right here. Show there are X questions in this survey. So we're gonna set it as off. The reason for that, a lot of times we have many questions inside a survey, like maybe sometimes even 100 and more, even though some of the questions are very easy to answer. For example, what is your age, or are you left-handed or right-handed, but still be counted as one question. So when participants see there are many questions in the survey, they might feel very overwhelmed and feel like, oh, maybe it's just too many questions, I don't want to answer anymore. And so it's better that not to provide this information in the survey on the page. Besides, we already have the progress bar on, so participants will know how far they are in completing the survey anyway. So I don't see the point of keeping this as on. So let's keep it as off. And for the next two options, we're gonna keep them as default. Show both and hide both. Okay. And the last thing I want you to change in this section is show no answer. We would like to keep it as off. The reason for that is if you want participants to have the option of skipping, not answering some questions in your survey, it's better to do it when you are actually setting up individual specific questions. The reason for that is you will be able to have the flexibility of still keeping some questions as mandatory and some question that they can provide no answer as an answer. But if you select this as on, that means all of your questions will have the option of no answer. So then they can just click no answer and then move on to the next question. Sometimes you may not want to do that because there will still some information that will be very crucial for your research, for your study. So I believe it's better to keep this option as off. Okay, so well, that's that for this presentation and navigation section. So let's save before we move on to the next one. So the next section is publication and access control. So I'm just gonna click on it and the list drop down, and the first option is list survey publicly, and I would like you to keep this as off. So that means your survey will not be publicly listed. If you have been to my data management workshop last year in CRCF, you will know my horror story, my personal horror story of listing my survey way back publicly. It was just a terrible mistake. However, if you have a very good reason to list your survey publicly to be searchable in the entire world, anybody can view it in the entire world. So you can feel free to keep this as on, and if you select it on, your survey will be listed in the McGill LimeSurvey list as well. But if you keep this as off, only participants with the direct link will be able to access the survey, so it's not directly searchable on the World Wide Web, which might be a good idea for many of the research that we do. Okay, so next options about date, start date and expiration dates. It's very good that you set up starting date and expiration dates so that your survey will be automatically online as of a specific date and specific time, and then will be automatically offline on a specific date and specific time. So you just need to click on this and then select a day, select a time. So it's very easy and it's good to do that. Okay, so let's move on. I'm going to keep this as off, but we will keep use CAPTCHA for survey access on. We'll set this option as on. Use CAPTCHA for survey access on. So CAPTCHA basically just a very small program intended to distinguish human from machine inputs. It's that kind of small distorted letter in some of the surveys. Before you can access it, you need to enter those distorted letters or words in a box to show that you are indeed a human, not a machine. So this option is very useful, especially when your survey has monetary compensation for participation, so that you can avoid other people using robots to fill out your survey in order to get money. So it's good to keep CAPTCHA on for survey access, for registration, and for save and load. So we're going to keep these three options as on. And again, and that's that for our publication and access control. So we're going to save before we move on to the next section. Okay, so the next section is going to be on notification and data management. So I'm just going to click on notification and data management right here. And the first option here is send basic admin notification email to. So you can enter a specific email address to receive notification from LimeSurvey. And I would not recommend you to put your personal email there, because the reason for that is this kind of notification email, actually there will be quite a bit of this email as you start collecting data, as people start filling out your questionnaire. You receive one email each time there is a participant started completing your survey. So if you have a specific project-related email address, feel free to use that email as an admin notification email, so then you can receive notifications every time something happens in LimeSurvey. But I would not personally use my personal email here, because just it will get very overwhelming very soon as the data collection process progress. And the next option here is detailed admin notification email. Basically, it's almost the same as the previous one, but it just this notification email will contain more details. So again, it's better not to put your personal email here. Just put the survey or project related email address here. Okay, so let's move on. So yes, we'd like to keep date stamp in our output, so we know when participants start and finish their survey, and we'd like to keep IP address, URL, also timing. It's very good to keep timing, safe timing in your survey to collect this information from the system. The reason for that, there could be times that participants finish 200 questions in 1 minute. So this is not so feasible, and if probably it's not very valid in terms of responses as well. So it's good to have this option to collect this information from the system, so that you can use as a basic screening tool. Okay, so let's move on. Enables assessment mode. We're going to keep this as off. The reason for that, if this is on, the survey will be treated as a quiz, which can be graded after, but usually we don't do that in research in most of our studies. So we're going to keep it as off. And the next option is participant may save and resume later. We're going to keep it as on. We set this option on. The reason for that, things could happen, so it's good to give participants the option that they can save their responses and then resume it and come back later to where they have left off. What will happen is, once participants save and say that, okay, I'm going to resume later, and participants will receive an email in their email address, and then with a link and a number, a token number, they can enter later on when they logging back into their original link, so that they will be able to resume the survey where they have left off. So it's a good option to keep it as on. And the last one is Google Analytics settings. Let's keep it as none, because many of our studies and research are we need to keep confidentiality to ensure confidentiality for our participants. So let's not get Google involved in that. So let's keep it as none. And then that's that for notification and data management. Let's save before we move on. Okay, now let's continue to tokens. So I'm going to click on it, and because like we mentioned before, we like to keep confidentiality for our participants, so we usually prefer anonymized responses. So we're going to keep this on, but this doesn't concern us. We'll just close it, and we'll keep this as on, and then we'll leave the second and the third option as off, and we will allow public registration. So we set this as on. The reason for that is by allowing this, well, basically we don't need to provide a list to LimeSurvey first. Anybody who has the direct link to our survey will be able to access it, will be able to register and start filling out our survey. If you keep this as off, only the people within your original list that you gave to LimeSurvey will be able to access their the survey through their email address. So that's not what we usually want. So let's keep this as on, and I think the rest we can keep it as default. Okay, so again, safety first. Let's save. And now for the last three sections right here, we'll make no changes to them. So we don't change anything in panel integration, plugins, and resources. And if in the future you need to start setting up more complicated and more fancy surveys, then definitely you can make changes to it. But for now, we'll start with a very simple basic survey setup, so we're not going to change anything in these three different sections. McGill IT also published a LimeSurvey user guide to create surveys. This user guide for me is more like a reference manual because it gives definitions of all the options LimeSurvey has. But it doesn't tell you what researchers usually choose or prefer while setting up a new survey. So the way I show you today how to set up a survey in this video is based on my experiences as a researcher in conducting survey research in psychology. So it may or may not be applicable for your specific research project, but if I were to conduct a simple survey, this is how I would have done as a start. So now this concludes our first training video on how to set up a LimeSurvey at McGill. The next video will be on how to add basic questions in the survey. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop by my office.